Let's kick off the show today with Murray & Roberts. The company reported a diluted headline full-year loss of 503 cents per share from 340 cents per share a year ago, as the company made provisions for contract completion costs and possible regulatory penalties for transgressions on some projects. The firm said it made an operating loss of 678 million rand. Murray & Roberts, which also operates in the Middle East and Chile and works with miners in Australia and Canada, said revenue from continuing operations rose 10% to 30.5 billion.
Murray & Roberts market cap 9.2 billion. Price earnings, I've taken everything into account. It comes minus 7.2 because they came out negative. No dividend yield because they're not paying a dividend. Daniel, let's start with you. Even if we strip out all the impairments and all of the stuff which we can say was kind of one-off, and we can argue that, but let's say it is one-off, they're still about 50% down, which is still kind of the bottom of the range of what results we've seen so far.
Yeah, look, I think if you take into GDP that was released just 2 days ago, GDP coming in at 1.3%, a fairly low number. So that indicates really the economic activity, and it shows that there is still a lot of depression in global markets and in South African markets. So I think it'll take a while still before Murray & Roberts does pick up. So at these sort of levels, yeah, it does seem still a bit depressed, and where to from here, we'll have to wait and see.
Well, what's fascinating is Murray & Roberts actually said that they can return to, or they should return to, acceptable profitability in the year ahead, really dependent on their order book and economic activity. And you're alluding to the GDP number that was released. In fact, the construction portion within that 1.3%, we saw 0.5% growth within construction. Do you think this is a glimmer of hope for construction companies, Dan?
Well, look, I think with the 55 billion order book, that hasn't been priced into the market just yet, or into Murray's. So I think it is possible that there can be growth in the stock still to come. There's still a lot of issues such as all the write-downs, and it'll take a while for those to flush through.
Yonatan, next go to you on the wall with a technical perspective, and this is a bit of a kind chart. I thought you might have given us one back to like 07, which would have showed the peak of 100, but that would have been mean and nasty. What we are seeing is a bit of a channel forming, and certainly a bit of support sitting around the 27-ish level.
Yeah, Simon, I think that since February this year has been forming a slow uprising channel, nice parallel trend bobbing up and forth between the lower support level and the upper resistance level. But currently sitting at the bottom support level at that 27, 28 rand level. So when you talk about a risk-reward ratio for a trader, this is a nice risk-reward ratio because you can get into the market at below the 28 rand level, stop just below that line, and you obviously got that target at the upper resistance level.
The red line there, I assume that's your usual 200-day. That's going to offer a bit of headwind, or would we look for perhaps a 32, 33 level?
Well, I mean, we can. I mean, I think that this 200-day moving average is extremely important, and it is, as you say, is going to offer resistance for future prices. But prices can break through that moving average for a few days, and then obviously just move back down again. But I'm not long-term bullish on the stock. I think there's a short-term rebound to around that 30, 32 rand level.
The way you said you can suggested.
And in terms of smart money, I'm assuming that is what the graph at the bottom is, or the line at the bottom.
No, Eleni, this is the RSI, which is actually measures the velocity of prices. Now, interesting that you did mention this, and I failed to mention this. This downward channel of the RSI, or the downward movement of the RSI, you'll see the lower peaks in this market, kind of like represents the lower peaks in the actual prices. So if you're looking for confirmation, you'd rather wait for the RSI to break through its own resistance level before jumping into the stock.
Okay, Daniel, from a technical view, what do you think?
Look, I think at these sort of levels, around 27 rand, I definitely think there is some opportunity to get long at these sort of levels, or buy or add it to your equity portfolio.
Isn't it slightly too early, because that's the rhetoric?
Look, I don't know. I think there's been so much added into the price at these levels already. All the bad debts have been written off already. So I do think a lot of it is priced into the market. So perhaps if you buy and hold at these sort of levels, maybe it is a good opportunity to get in at these levels.
The market looks forward, and all this bad news that comes out in the results today,
I think it is priced into the share.
We know about it. I mean, the market wasn't surprised. I mean, their impairments went from, what was it, 800 to 1.8 billion. They've got the Gautrain tunnel leaking between Rosebank and the city. That's going to cost them more. The market kind of says, you know what, we understand the bad, but now they're looking for a glimmer, surely.
Yeah, look, I mean, there is that leak in the Rosebank tunnel, and I think they still don't know the cost of all those repairs. They haven't actually, they're also with the competition tribunal, they still have a lot of fines to pay, and they don't even know what those numbers are. So they haven't even put those into the figures yet either. So that still has to be priced in maybe at some stage as well, depending on how big those fines are. They'll have to pay for those leaks at some stage as well. So the whole project really of the Gautrain was really, that they made no profit. They actually made huge losses on it, and still a lot of losses are to come.
Okay, Yonatan, from a long-term perspective, in fact, we know that value investors have been very keen for construction. We know Simon Brown's also been very keen, but I don't think not so much on Murray and Roberts, if I'm not mistaken. From a long-term perspective, buy and hold for the longer term, could we possibly get to levels that we saw pre-crisis?
Not at this, what the chart is showing you at the moment. I wouldn't be looking for a long-term investment in Murray and Roberts at this stage. I would need to see things changing in the market, the 200-day moving average flattening out and start pointing up, prices above that moving average, so showing some confidence in the market activity. But for a long-term investment, not at this stage.
Daniel, I want to come back to you. We're talking Gautrain, how they probably lost money in it. They talk about their order book up at 55 billion versus 44. And in the good old days, we would look at order books and you could almost bank that money at a margin. And I'm starting to wonder, particularly in these mega projects, which Murray and Roberts does a lot of, if they're ever ultimately profitable. You start these giant, a 5% margin is not a big room forever. Yeah,
look, Murray's is actually working with Eskom. They've been working with Eskom since 2007, and they were looking at margins of between 5 and 7.5%. And that was with the old CEO, Brian Bruce. And for the last 3-4 years, they've actually been totally flat on those earnings. They've made no revenue. Now the new CEO, he's actually come in and said, we're going to try and really make between 5 to 7%, 5 and 7.5%. So that's quite interesting to note. I don't know if it'll be achievable in this sort of industry. Just quickly, also going back to the construction sector, I know Yonatan said he's not too bullish on the stock long term. My view is I'm not too bullish on the entire sector, but I think at some stage these stocks will be a buy. And at these sort of levels, you've got to have some sort of position in the stock. It's a 5 to 7 year cycle that perhaps maybe we're only in the middle or on the way out. So where do you buy? Are you going to get much better levels? Maybe not. That's why I think at some stage around these sort of prices you should be buying.
Okay, so hot or not for you then?
For me, I'm hot.
Hot.
I think at these levels.
So buying Murray and Roberts at this point, despite these numbers?
I think so.
Yonatan?
Short term looks good. Long term, still stay out long term.
Okay, and when you say short term, clarify for us.
Short term for the next 3 to 4 months, possibly looking for that target of 32 Rand. But when it gets to that 32 Rand, make sure that you're quick to take your profits.
Simon?
Well, you know what I think of construction. I think that the worst has to be behind them. That or we're going back to living in caves, and I like my house. I like construction. I'm hot on it. I got to say, below 28, this is hot. Why the heck not? Yeah.
And then for the long term, or would you concur with Yonatan that
I think what we take him from a different perspective. I think he's right. When he gets to the sort of levels, it's going to come back, etc. But the long-term guy said, I got a stock that's going to go places, and it might be another, who knows how long the cycle is, couple of years, but you got it at a good price. That's important.
I agree.
Fantastic. Let's delve into the next stock. Diversified miner African Rainbow Minerals reported a surge in full-year headline earnings per share to 15 Rand and 59 cents from 807 cents a year earlier, supported by higher commodity prices. Cash generated by operations increased 72% to 5.9 billion Rand, with attributable earnings from iron ore rocketing 224% to 2.3 billion Rand. The company declared a dividend of 450 cents per share. That's a 450% jump from the previous year's payment of 200 cents per share.
Market cap on African Rainbow, 38 billion, price earnings 11.8, dividend yield 2.5. Daniel, a lot of mining companies in the JSE, they come across the desk. If it's a gold miner, prices are going great, but costs are killing them. Platinum guys are not doing so good, but the guys in iron ore and the diversified miners, they have been printing crash. And this is what you want to see. When you're a price taker, and that price is really in your favor, you want what we're seeing here. Strong, good cash flows, numbers, results.
Yeah, definitely. The precious metal space is obviously bearing fruit now. Commodity prices are almost at all-time highs, so a lot of value there. The Rand has put a little bit of pressure on these precious miners. Although if you look at earnings from African Rainbow Minerals, it's really unbelievable results, and I think they'll continue to grow at this sort of pace. They've said that they anticipate very robust earnings in the medium term still, so that's very positive for them.
And we saw the Rand today under 7, so briefly under 7, but certainly that worry it might go to 8 or 9, or that not a worry if you're a miner. The rand looks like it's going to come back and hurt them again. In their case, also Eskom, everyone talks about Eskom. I was crunching through their different mines. In no place is Eskom more than 10%. Typically it's around 4 or 6 or 8% of the actual costs. So Eskom's a worry, but perhaps not the same size of worry as it is for some of the other guys who've got costs up at 25 or 30 for power.
Yeah, look, I mean, everyone's going to have those costs from Eskom. And you know, you'll have to address it in different ways and try and cut back in other ways, I guess. So you know, where they lose on Eskom pricing or where they gain there, they might lose on the rand or on commodity prices that may move up and down quite aggressively. So yeah, definitely there is still opportunity, you know, for them to try and work around that Eskom issue and try and bring those costs down still. And yes, they are saving, I guess, because they are slightly lower than Billiton's and Anglo's costs.
Well, it's fascinating that from a technical perspective, I've spoken to a few technical analysts, Yonatan, and it seems that this is a preferred pick relative to the likes of BHP Billiton in particular. Do you concur with that?
Well, to a certain extent, but maybe not 100%. And I'll tell you the reason why. We see on this chart a 2-year support line on African Rainbow Minerals, breaching its resistance line, which means that the support, breaching the support line, sorry, which means that once it's breached, it now becomes a resistance level. We've seen a full year's downtrend in prices, but only today has it breached its short-term or medium-term resistance line on the way up. Now, that's a very, very good sign for the stock. So
it was up 5% or so, in fact, today.
So we could expect further growth or further surge in prices, possibly towards the 210 Rand level. And again, this is confirmed by the RSI, which has broken through its own resistance level. So this looks good.
Dan, bringing it back to you and Daniel on the desk. I mean, one of the things with African Rainbow Minerals, a lot of JVs where they're either a junior or a majority partner, one of them being Assmang with their 50-50 with Assor. A lot of their projects, sometimes they're 30%, sometimes they're 70%. Is that good or bad? You know, I suppose there's pros and cons. Your take on it? I mean,
I think it's very good. They do have some of the biggest mining companies in the world as potential JV partners. What they did say as well today, they do want to spend 10 billion on expansion in the next 3 years, and that's quite a short period of time. So that's quite a nice, quite a nice angle for them to really grow and continue doing these sort of results. So I think with those partners, definitely they'll get some funding from those guys and definitely be able to push to keep these results up.
Well, we were just looking at the cash on hand, 3.2 billion Rand, and an increase of the dividend by 125%. That's quite significant. We're actually starting to see these miners, as Simon was alluding to, they're printing cash essentially. Shouldn't they just be pumping it into further expansion, or do you think that it is time to start rewarding shareholders?
Well, look, they did pay a 4.50 dividend. I think that was quite a nice dividend. One of the higher dividends paid by...
But dividend yield was 2.5%, so...
Still slightly low relative
to
in the sector, maybe still slightly low. But, I mean, I think it's a nice way to reward shareholders, even if it's a small token of dividend, as well as do an expansion plan. So it's nice to have that variation there, you know, on both. Shareholders get rewarded and guaranteed some sort of a promise that they are going to do a huge expansion plan.
I was speaking with Ian Cruikshanks from Nedbank Capital and asked him if we've capitalized on the massive increase in the commodity price space over the past year or so, and he says that mining companies haven't done enough. Would you concur with that? Do you think that African Rainbow Minerals could have done more by way of increasing production substantially to mitigate that very strong rand?
Well, they have. I mean, in the results today, again, they said that they've reached record production across a lot of their different assets. And an expansion plan is there, and they're trying to look into that quite aggressively and really approach that, as I said, over a 3-year period, which is quite a short period of time, I think, for quite a large expansion plan. So I think there is still room for that to, you know, they could look at perhaps expanding it at a faster pace. I don't think it's necessary. I think it's nice to get those dividends, you know, back to the shareholders. So at these sort of levels, I think they have.
Isn't this expansion? I mean, we've got Kumba Iron Ore expanding. They've got new capacity coming on. The Khumani Iron Ore project here is. I'm just getting too much around the world. I mean, I don't know if demand's going to go that much. I mean, demand is there. But wow, we're getting expansion left, right, and centre.
If they have the opportunity to expand into a coal mine or new mines all over the place, if they have the cash and the facility and the backing and the guarantee, or let's not call it a guarantee, but the potential to make extra profits on that, why not? I think they should definitely go for it. And if they have the backing, and for sure, you know, I mean, the team is definitely, or the management is definitely will be making wise decisions with Patrice and their global partners and the very strategic management team. So I think they'll be making those decisions correct.
Okay, Yonatan, that resistance line heading
Yeah, well,
downwards,
the resistance
right?
line I was talking about is actually the 200-day moving average. Now, if you have a look at the 200-day moving average, the recent action is actually starting to change direction. And that's an ominous sign for the long-term prospects for African rainbow minerals. We might be able to, we'll get a pullback up towards that 200 Rand level where the 200-day moving average is. And just above that is sitting that 2-year support line, which is now the resistance line. So again, short term, yeah, I think it could tick back up to around the 200, 210 Rand level. But long term, it's going to take some struggle to get past that.
Okay, and long term, you're talking what, 5 years?
I'm talking for the next couple of years, maybe a year and a half to 2 years.
Okay, but short term, you're still keen.
So short term hot, long term not. Daniel, you hot or not?
I'm definitely hot on the stock. As I said, with that expansion plan, I think definitely, I mean, if the earnings continue the way they are, you know, headline HEPS increasing, you know, almost 100%. I think it's a magnificent number. So if that continues, definitely hot.
So hot in the long term and short term.
Short
so
term.
You don't agree with Yonatan there?
Well, with the growth in China, I think there's still a lot of growth potential.
Okay, so Yonatan, hot for you in the short term, not hot long term.
Correct.
Simon Brown.
I like it. I think it's great. Price earnings 12. I can buy Billiton on 8. I'd rather buy Billiton.
You'd rather buy Billiton?
For sure. I'm talking my book. I own Billiton, but I get a better dividend yield at a lower PE. I think they both have great numbers. I'd rather have Billiton.
I think let's just do a bit of disclosure here. Do you own African Rainbow Minerals?
I do own African Rainbow Minerals, and I don't own Billiton.
And Anglo?
Anglos, I own Anglos.
No,
you own everything.
No.
Sold everything, don't own anything, what?
Not quite, but
Not quite.
close.
Okay.